Okay, everyone. It is just about 8:30. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Couple quick announcements for the month of March. Church does a Code Blue. Houses homeless people, very noble cause. We are displaced, jammed in this room. There's a little shortage of seats tonight. There'll be more next week. Just be mindful of that. So it's a mild inconvenience. We've been working around this, for many, many years since the group started. And just be mindful that it is truly for a noble cause. And if you go over there and you can see how much effort and how much work they put into helping others, and that's what this group is basically about giving service and helping others, getting free of this disease of alcoholism, having an awakening, and changing the course of our life from our selfish self-centeredness to service to others, to God and AA. With that, we have the world's greatest chairperson. Where is he at? Boom, Brian. Let's give him a warm welcome. Let's see what he's got.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Brian. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. That's 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. We have food and fellowship for this group starting at 8 o'clock every week, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. There's a business meeting for this group. It meets every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30. So feel free to come early and join us if you want to become a member of this group. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all our speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone that's new to this meeting or visiting from out of town that would like to introduce themselves on a first-name basis so we can welcome you? Yeah.
Marcus, alcoholic, visiting from Baltimore.
Marcus. Welcome. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Mike.
Welcome. Yeah.
Keith, alcoholic from Republican, visiting.
Hey. Welcome. Okay, we got everybody? The Conscious Contact Speaker Group does encourage sponsorship. Would anyone with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and who is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. So we got plenty of people willing to sponsor. If you are new, if you're out there, if you're struggling, hang out with us after the meeting. We got a bunch of people here. We'd love to talk with you, get you some meeting lists, some phone numbers, get you into the solution a little bit here. Are there any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? Anybody have anything going on? Nothing. Okay. This group has a sister group. It's a Big Book study meeting that meets right up the road Thursdays at 7:30. That's at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street in Doylestown, PA. And again, the coffee for that meeting's on at 6:15, so feel free to show up early, join us if you want to be in service, even better. We have meeting lists and Big Books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a Big Book, Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of Big Books and CDs to help those who cannot afford them can put their donations in the jar on the back table marked Big Book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. We have a YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, PA. We post all our speakers on there. You can subscribe to us. We have, 300,000 some views on there now. It's a great tool to have. If you hear a message here and you think of somebody else that might be able to benefit from that message, you can share it that way. It's a good tool to have. We also have a Facebook page. If you want to stay in touch with the happenings, like if we're displaced like we are tonight, or any events, workshops, things we might have going on, as well as a lot of other groups will post their happenings. So it's a good resource to have to stay tied in with happenings in AA throughout the area. And with that, I'm going to bring Tom up here. Tom is going to read our Just for Today Prayer of Recovery.
Welcome home, everyone. My name is Thomas, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Thomas.
I'll be reading the Just for Today Prayer of Recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anyone but myself. And with that being said, let's give Susan a warm welcome, for the preamble.
Hi, everyone. My name's Susan, and I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. I'm going to have Matt come up and read the 12 steps. There you are, Matt.
Welcome home, everybody. My name is Matt. I'm an alcoholic. All right. The 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Next, we have Brian to finish it up.
Okay, this group does have a 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This time we'll see that the basket makes its way around. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, but we have expenses, and your contributions do help us to cover the cost of rent, food, big books, workshops, etc., so we do appreciate it. There's absolutely no smoking on the church property. It's the church's policy. We have a good working relationship with the church, so just be considerate of that as you're coming and going from the meeting. Wait till you leave. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group on loan to us from the Hatchery Group of Townsend. Please help me welcome Lukas.
Good evening. My name's Lukas. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's July the 28th of 2010. And for that short period of time, I'm as grateful as I know how to be. Alcoholics Anonymous changed my life. And I wish I could give you a master thesis on what that looks like and what that sounds like. But when I get up here and I tell you that AA has changed my life, there's a lot of people here shaking their heads because they might have had the same experience that I've had. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to thank the 3 guys I came up with. I drove up with Marcus and Mike from Towson. I've sponsored Marcus for many a year, and I've known him for many a year, and he didn't even blink when I asked him to come with me. I've known Mike, the 3 iterations of Mike, the 3 times he's been in and out of AA, and I love him. And I called him yesterday, and I said, hey, we're going to do this road trip. It's probably going to be a few hours, which, a few hours. He was like, oh, probably 2 hours. And then he didn't realize it's going to be like 6-hour round trip and then dinner. And, man, I just love him. And I met Mark several months ago at a young people's conference. And, man, what an experience we had. And we've been thick as thieves since, and I love him. And the thing that I always need to remind myself is how far am I willing to go to speak? Like, just think about that. I'm pretty sure there's people in here that are willing to go pretty far in order to speak in AA. But on the other side of that coin is, how far am I willing to drive to listen? And these 3 guys sacrificed pretty much all of their day. Mark got a babysitter to be with his daughter. I guess he doesn't like his daughter. But I need to always remember that, and doing road trips like this helps me remember stuff like that, because these guys have heard me umpteenth times, and they're not going to hear anything different. And that, I need to remember that. But when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was 15 years old. I'm currently 30. That's embarrassing, I know. And what I can tell you is before I came to AA at 15 years old, I bounced in and out of this program for 3 years, convinced that I wasn't an alcoholic. And the only thing worse than being powerless over alcohol is being ignorant to the fact that you're powerless over alcohol. And that's what I was. And I would come here to meetings like this where there were strong members of AA who had working knowledge of our book. And they would do the same thing over and over again. They'd sit me down, they'd put a book in front of me, they'd qualify me to be here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And they'd say something like, are you willing to do what we're doing in order to get and stay sober? And I've always been an option B type of guy. And I'd be like, oh, this is really good. Ron, I'm so great that's happened to you because of AA. But where are the guys that are like, not really staying sober? And like, their life looks a little bit better. You know, like, they're here. That's who I want to talk with. And I yielded the same results over and over again. But thank God the individuals of Alcoholics Anonymous that I met when I was 12 were also still here when I was 15, because it instilled in me one thing and one thing only, that something was happening here. That these people had changed their lives. I had heard their stories over and over again, and they were not the same individuals. And now before I ever came to Alcoholics Anonymous or before I ever took a drink, what I can tell you is growing up, I felt apart from in every aspect of my life. I just was never at the right place with the right people at the right time. And I just describe my life like the episode in SpongeBob where they go to Sandy Cheeks Dome. Now, some of you have probably never seen SpongeBob. That's okay. But they walk in and they need water to live, and this place is fresh air. And they're doing everything in their power to try and find water. They're trying to run through this glass dome. They're trying to climb up over it. They're trying to dig under it. They're trying to run straight through it. They're trying to dip their head in, watering plants and whatnot. But they do everything except ask for help. That's my life before I come to you. I do everything except ask for help. I'm never at the right place at the right time with the right people. I'm apart from every aspect of my life. And they fuel these feelings that I'm less than or not equal to. And I just bring that in. And I can tell you the first time that I felt separation or relief or freedom from those thoughts is the first time I ever took a drink. The first time I took a drink was behind the woods at Goucher College in Towson, Maryland, with Monica, Trevor, and Brendan. Monica was she was a girl, and that's all she needed to be. She just happened to be she was just the most attractive one that I went to school with. Trevor was the most athletic guy I went to school with, and he was like the best looking guy. I've always been pretty chubby, He was batting 1,000, I was batting 150. And then there was Brendan. Brendan was the funniest guy I went to school with. You know him. He just walked in, and he had a story for every weekend debacle he'd been into, and he was just the life of the party. And I just wasn't like that. And I had this thought process going into this experience with them is that if they knew who I really was, they would want nothing to do with me. And the only reason I was convinced of that is because I had wanted nothing to do with me for the longest time. And I remember like it was yesterday, out from Brendan's black Jansport backpack comes this lukewarm, sweaty bottle of Mad Dog 2020. Yeah, the real stuff. You mentioned Mad Dog at an AA meeting. It sounds like one of those sketchy porn videos. People are like, oh, yeah. And people are shaking their head like, yep. Like, I know I'm with my people tonight. And I remember that bottle got passed to me, and I was raised with a moral code and a moral compass. I come from a good family. I come from really great stock. I was raised in the church. My family was raised in the church. I knew the difference between right and wrong. I knew the importance of relying and depending upon a power greater than myself way before I ever came to AA. But that bottle got in front of me, and I didn't even blink twice. I just started drinking. And it kept getting to me and to me and to me and to me. And then suddenly, this thought process of, if you knew who I really was, you had nothing to do with me, instantaneously changed to, you're so lucky I'm here right now. I gave up nothing to be here, and you need to know that. And I'd like to tell you the way that night ended is, I wound up proving to Brendan I was funnier than him. I wound up showing that I was more athletic than Trevor, and I wound up hooking up with Monica. It didn't happen. Never happened. Yeah. I'm the least funny, most unattractive, permanently single, recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you don't want at least two of those things, including the recovered one, I can't help you. You're going to have to ask Ron. You're going to have to ask some of the other people that are here tonight. I'm not your guy. But I remember waking up the next day, and it was like I made a conscious choice that I was going to do whatever it took in my life to drink that way and feel that way, again, no matter what the cost. And I remember going through the steps the first time. My sponsor pointed it out that was my first spiritual awakening. And it was like, man, my first psychic change. And it kind of just kicked back, and it's like, yeah, you're right. That was the first time in my life I didn't look at the world and thought how less I was. It was the first time I looked at the world and thought how much better I was. And little did I know that when I made that thought that I was going to do whatever it took to drink and live the way that I wanted to live, I didn't realize the price I would have to pay. It talks about in Bill's story, a price had to be paid. I mean, I paid a price to drink. And I'm not the type of person that's going to come up here and say that I lost things. Because if I tell you I lost things because of my drinking, it implies that one day I'm going to find those things. No, I have freedom of choice. Like, I gave those things away. And I didn't think twice about it. And I could tell you some crazy stories. I could tell you some wet and wild stories, but my drinking's perfectly described in the doctor's opinion. It says men and women drink essentially because they like the effects produced by alcohol. I drink to get drunk. Like, there's no question about it. And it says the sensation is so elusive that after a while you cannot differentiate the true from the false. The alcoholic life seems the only normal one. What it's like is like there's this line in the sand where I'll tell myself that if it ever gets this bad, I'll stop, or I'll moderate. I'll control it. And I just get up to those lines and I just blow right past them. And I continue to seek lower companionship. And then it describes a guy like me, physically sober, removed from a solution. So this is the guy that gets introduced to AA, that bounces in and out for 3 years, says they're restless, irritable, and discontented. That's me to a T. I'm unable to rest or relax. I'm easily annoyed. I'm unsatisfied, dissatisfied, and unhappy with the life that I live. That's me to a T, and it might be someone like you. And then it says, unless I can experience the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks I see others taking with impunity. And the thing is, there is this sense. The sense of ease and comfort. My senses are temporary. Like, there are hot dogs here. There are cronuts, is that what we called them? Cronuts. That was new to me. Is that like a PA thing? But there are cronuts here. We could smell the hot dogs, we could smell the cronuts. But if we walked out of this room and we went out here to the lobby, we couldn't smell them. And for those of you that want to be difficult, if we walked outside and the doors were closed and you got in your car, you couldn't smell it. Right? That's temporary. And that's what I get, is I get these temporary feelings of ease and comfort that come at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks I see other people taking with impunity. And literally what that looks like in my mind is it's like, oh, it's Saturday. I need to drink. Oh, it's raining outside. I need to drink. Oh, it's sunny outside. I need to drink. Oh, that person's wearing a red suit. I need to drink. Like, anything my mind has to latch on to convince myself it's okay to drink the way that I want to drink. That's what I'll do, and that's what I did. And it usually sounds as something as silly as this. I've just gotten out of a psych ward. I've just gotten out of a detox. I've just gotten out of a boys' home or a juvenile detention facility. And a buddy just, calls me. He's like, hey, so-and-so just got arrested for the first time. We're going to have a party to celebrate. Like, Who does that? Alcoholics do that. I tell my family that they're ashamed. They can't believe I did stuff like that. But me, I'm proud I did things like that. And I show up under this guise that I'm just going to have a singular drink. And I show up and I take the singular drink. And what happens is the phenomenon of craving develops, just like it tells me. Where all of a sudden I take that singular drink and then all of a sudden I say to myself, well, nothing terrible is going to happen from one drink to 15 drinks. And then I do that. And I pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. I go to this party under the guise that I'm going to have a singular drink and just be a part of. I take that drink, all of a sudden I tell myself that I need to drink more, and I 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 drink more. And then I find myself doing God knows what. In my experiences, the longer that I was out there, I was willing to trade my dignity, my morality, and my respect to live the type of life my mind told me I had to live, and that's what I did. And I would come in front of a judge, a police officer, a psych ward psychologist, or worse, I would be placed in front of my parents. And I would say things like, it'll never happen again. And here's how. And I've got what they call today a relapse prevention plan. And the only thing that's prevented me from doing for many a year is stay sober. I have this 10-point plan about how it's never going to happen again, about how, it was Mark's fault. He's a bad influence. About how if it hadn't been at Mike's house, it wouldn't have brought back these strong memories of the good times drinking. And if I hadn't run into this scumbag, Marcus, I'd be okay. And the best part about that is when I become convinced of those things, I can convince my family. And my family becomes convinced of, it is going to be different this time. He seems that he's really remorseful. And he says he's not going to drink again. And then what happens is this guy, Dr. Silkworth, he decrees me my death sentence. He tells me this is repeated over and over unless they can experience an entire psychic change. There's very little hope of his recovery. I've just been decreed a death sentence. And I believe in the key facet of hope in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I believe that we need to give people here that don't have hope. But before I could ever experience hope in Alcoholics Anonymous, I need to experience hopelessness, and I needed to know how bad it was. I needed to know how screwed I was. I needed to know that I was literally dealing with something that was life or death. And my experience has to dictate that. There have been plenty of times in my life I've seen people come into AA and we try and beyond scared straight them. If you drink again, you're going to die. Jails, institutions, or death. I'm not convinced until I'm convinced. That means nothing to me. And I wasn't convinced until I was convinced. And I have those experiences tell it's never going to happen again. And to your surprise, and certainly to my surprise, and certainly to my family's surprise, it happens over and over again. And what a night looks like at the Muller household on a consistent basis is I show up to my household intoxicated after being told I can't show up intoxicated. My mother, as soon as I walk in the door, she gives me the riot act. And what happens is it goes from her screaming to her crying because she feels so hopeless because she's done everything in her power to get her son to stop drinking, but he won't stop drinking. And you see, I'm feeling okay, but by the time my mom starts yelling and she starts crying, I get agitated, I get annoyed, and I start to fire back. And I tell my mom things like, I'm leaving the house. And what my mom does is she goes to doors, not similar to that, but older doors that have the crown molding around them, and she just digs her nails into them, and she braces like she's going to get hit with a tsunami, and she says, you're not leaving this house. But the thing is, I'm a real live alcoholic, and I do anything I want, and I start to put my hands on my mother, and an emotional altercation turns physical. And I'm not proud of saying stuff like this, but I'm not going to lie to you. This is the type of man I am, not removed from a drink. This is the type of man I am removed from a solution. And my mom gets thrown to the side, and she starts crying. And my grandparents, who are living with us because they're trying to help my mom raise me and my brother, they're trying to console me, and they're trying to tell me to stop. And next thing you know, my older brother comes flying down the stairs. And with all his might, he picks me up and he slams me down. And my brother, no matter how many physical altercations I got into with him, with my family, with my mom, with my dad, with my grandparents, he never hit me. And I'll talk about this a little later on, but the reason he never hit me is because he knew that I suffered from alcoholism way before I ever knew I suffered from alcoholism. And I can tell you, I'll never forget what it feels like having my brother's warm tears run down the back of my neck, him begging me to stop. Him begging me to stop because he doesn't want to hurt me. And I would shake myself off of him and I would walk to the door. And every time I walked to my front door, I'd always tell myself the same thing: just don't turn around. Just don't turn around. Just keep walking. Just keep walking. And there were those days I would just keep walking. But then there were those days where I would turn around and I would see the same thing I saw 1,000 times over. My mom on the ground, my grandparents consoling them, and my brother walking back and forth with his hands interlocked like this, not knowing what to do. And I just went to some destitute place and did some destitute things to drink and live the life my mind tells me I have to live. And my dad would drive 3 hours away and he would search some of this, just the gulliest places, and he would find me on occasion. And when my dad would find me, he would do the same thing that he knew how to do. Guys like him, that it's how they were raised. And it's no fault of my father. I love my father. He would grab me and he would shake me and he'd say, "What are you trying to do to my family? What are you trying to do to my name? Can't you just stop? Why won't you just grow up?" And man, I knew what he meant. And I'm telling you, I wanted to stop and I wanted to grow up. But the thing is I don't know that I'm powerless over alcohol. I don't realize that when it comes to this idea of willpower, I don't have that. I realize before I ever come to AA or I don't realize this until I come to AA, that self-knowledge is going to avail a guy like me nothing. I woke up this morning and I looked at my bank app and I wasn't a millionaire. Tomorrow when I wake up, knowing that I'm not a millionaire, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I still won't be a millionaire. Because faith without works is dead. And my dad, he would find me and he would say those things, and I would say some of the most horrific things to my father. And my dad, through the 9-step experience, he would tell me those 3-hour drives back home to his house as he would say things and he would pray to a God he wasn't sure he still believed in. And I don't know about anybody in here, I do not have children, but I can imagine, based off some of the conversations I have, is, we pray for our children to have health, wealth, and prosperity. Anything they want, they grow up happy, they grow up healthy. I mean, they just live a life that they want to live. And all my dad's praying on those nights is that I get safe passage through the night. That I get safe passage through the night, because maybe the next morning I'll finally grow up. I'll finally find that willpower I've been lacking. I'll finally just snap out of this phase of my life. And that doesn't happen. And I continue to live that way and I continue to go down, down, and down. And what happened for a guy like me is I'd have these experiences. The reason why I bounced in and out of AA is I'd have these windows of opportunity where I'd come to and I'd say, man, I can't do this anymore. But the thing that I didn't know about these windows of opportunity is they shut fast. And I wake up one morning and I'm willing and I make a few phone calls, and then maybe an hour later it's like, whoa, that was a big over-exaggeration. Definitely don't need AA. And on July 27th of 2010, I came to, after what was not a horrible night of drinking, just another night of drinking. But I was just beat. And I remember telling myself, and not a thought of my own, of, I can't do this. Like something needs to give here. And the thing is I sat on those thoughts and had no action behind them. And like 15 minutes later, it was like, whoa, don't quit when you're really getting ready to hit big. Like there's that old joke, like most gamblers quit before they hit it big. Like that's my thing. Like, most alcoholics hit it big before they quit. And I'm like, I'm going to keep going for it. And a couple hours later, I found myself in an altercation where a young man loses his life, and I have to answer for that. And I come to in a hospital on July 28th of 2010, petrified. Not petrified because I think I'm going to drink again. Petrified because I'm faced with circumstances of my life that I do not want to be faced with. And I don't want to come back to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I want to escape the circumstances of my life. And if I want to escape the circumstances of my life, I'm prepared to do some pretty drastic things. And one of those drastic things as a result of participating, and what I participated in that day is that I was shuffled back into Alcoholics Anonymous. And the thing is every time I came back to AA, I came back a little bit lower. And what I mean is when I first came to AA, I came to AA with my chest puffed out. You know, I wanted to spin around for you guys, show you what it looked like to come here and not need the steps and get sober and live happily ever after, maybe even drink successfully. And then I came back again and I kind of like had my head shrugged low, and, you know, I'd come across guys like Marcus and it'd be like, yeah, man, I'm doing all right. Like, yeah, just hanging out, just checking this place out. Had some free time tonight. Yes, I had some free time, so I figured I'd come to an AA meeting. And then when I came back again, I was crawling back into AA. And I was crawling back into AA, not literally. And it's almost like I was leaning on these tables to look you in the eye. To be like, no, man, I'm good. I'm good. I know I don't look good, but I am good. And then when I finally came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, I slithered in here like a snake. Slithered in here on my belly. I couldn't look anybody in the eyes. I was ashamed of what I had done. I wasn't convinced I was an alcoholic, but I know I didn't want to face what I was getting ready to face. And I had this huge conundrum on my hand. And what happened for a guy like me, and what I think one of the most profound things I've ever heard in AA is, how long can you hold your breath? How long can you come to AA, take from us everything, and I mean take from us everything, and give and do nothing in return? And for me, it was about 6 months. I showed up to AA meetings the right way. You know, this is an 8:30 meeting. You show up at 8:31 because there are going to be no greeters outside. I mean, I walked in and there were so many, and I felt so welcomed, and I felt so at home. There were so many people up there, and it was like, you know, and if you're new, it's like, you walk in, it's just like, hey, let's wait out here. Let's wait till it dies down a little bit. Let's wait for our opportune time. Because what's going to happen is, you know, I met Ron at the front door. And if I was broken and I was beaten, a trained member of Alcoholics Anonymous will see that. And I can guarantee you what would have happened is he would have either pulled me to the side or he would have grabbed some of the goons here to pull me to the side and talk to me and give me a 12-step experience, qualify me to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what would have happened immediately. They wouldn't have waited for me to slither out of the meeting before it ended for someone to chase me out into the parking lot. I'd be like, hey, man, I know we wasted an hour of your time. You probably didn't hear anything the speaker had to say, because even if you heard anything good, it's not going to change your life. This is a program based on action. Part of that's listening, but you can't show up to AA meetings and listen and expect your life to change. You know, a big thing that I hear in our area is like, you know, well, so-and-so says on this speaker tape, or so-and-so says on that speaker tape. Stop trying to have that person's experience. Come in here and have your own experience, because that's what will change your life. And, you know, I show up, let me step off that soapbox. And, you know, but that's what would happen. I'd show up to meetings late because I didn't want to get talked to by anybody. I would sit all the way in the back because, you know, if you sit all the way in the back, the likelihood of the speaker being like, oh, well, what about you? Do you want to share something? I mean, if you're like a good standing member in A and you saw me, if it was like a round robin meeting, you'd be like, he doesn't want to share. We might not want him to share. And I would leave at 9:28. Because heaven forbid you stay for when the meeting ends. Because this is what happens if you're new. I don't know if you still do it up here. We don't do it anymore, and that's because of other stuff. But, you know, holding hands and doing the Our Father. Everyone's like, oh my, come hold my hand. Lucas, come hold my hand. Like, it's like, oh, no, thank you. Yeah, rather leave. And I would just leave. And nothing was changing about my life. I was forcibly in AA because the reality is like, I didn't want to have to go do time. So I was petrified. Like, I'm grateful that it said on the flyer that I'm from Towson, Maryland. I used to tell people that I was from Baltimore. You know, my sponsor is not from Maryland. My sponsor lives in Oklahoma. And I remember the first time I went down and met, you know, my bigger extended sponsorship family. And I was like, yeah, I'm from Baltimore. They're like, oh, dude, so is it really like The Wire? And like, I have no experience in that. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's tough out there. Yeah, like, yeah. Like, I'm from like an I'm from like a middle to middle upper class area of Maryland. Like, the scariest stuff I've seen is on TV. Yeah, is the truth of it. And what happened is I kept doing that, and then good standing members of AA filled in the gaps for me. And just as I've touched on this whole, like, you know, well, this speaker says this, like, I've been and I've heard, I think I've been to and heard some of the best talks in AA in my life. Like, stuff where I just was like, I mean, I'm just getting cracked open in the front row crying. But I can tell you, I've never seen a demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous as good as the one that was given to me when I was on my way out at 6 months sober. I showed up to this meeting every Saturday night that for the longest time was my home group, the 6-day group. And I sat in the back of this meeting and just looked as angry as I could. And there was this old timer, Rick. And what I got to tell you is, you know, at this time in my life, I'm 16 years old. This guy, Rick, is in his mid to late 50s. He's got 4 adult stepchildren and like 15 grandchildren. Like, he's got a busy life. He's married to a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous who's been sober as long as he had been. And he just walked right up to me and he just goes, hey man, I'm Rick. I haven't seen you here before. And I'm infuriated. It's like, oh, I've been here for 6 months. That's what I'm telling myself. It's like, I've been here for 6 months. I've practically run this meeting. Don't ask anyone. And I mean, I'm just like boiling. And he just says the simplest thing. He says, hey, me and my wife sit over here on the other side in the back row, and if you want, I'll leave a seat open between us. And everything in my head is like, no, I don't want to sit with this guy, like, definitely not. And then the other side, you know, this, you know, egomaniac is like, well, yeah, man, he's old. Maybe I could, like, you know, help him out. Like, Peter, I need some help, or needs a friend or something. Like, this guy needs nothing. He wants nothing I have. And he literally just goes, hey, I'm going to go get some coffee. He says, you know, what's your poison? He's like, mine's a little bit of sugar, a little bit of cream. And I'd never drinking coffee in my life up to this point, let alone AA coffee, which is like jet fuel. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the same thing. Like, us strong men. And he brings me a cup of coffee. He brings me a half cup of coffee back because he doesn't know if I'm going to be shaking. He hasn't seen my hands. I look roughed up. And he sits down, and I drink this coffee, and I don't remember anything the speaker said. And I don't know if it was because of the coffee, because I was crazy, or both. Probably because I was crazy. And at the end of the meeting, he calls me up. He gets a directory, and he says, hey, these are the meetings in your area where people are on fire for Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're going to go to these places if you want to have the experience that I've had. And he circled these younger meetings in my area, and he said, do you drive? And I said, no, my mom takes me to meetings. Like, my whole bit's falling to pieces in front of me. And he goes, where do you live? And I said, well, I live in Towson. And Rick lived like an hour plus round trip from where I lived. And he would drive an hour round trip to pick me up. And then he would drive, 15, 20, 30 minutes into Hunt Valley, Deep Hunt Valley, Phoenix, Maryland, Cockeysville. You guys don't know any of that, but that's like, he would drive these places to allow me to have an experience if I wanted to have an experience here. Out of the goodness of his heart. Never asked for anything in return. He did that because that's what good standing members of AA do for individuals that are willing to take the action. Not willing to take the action, that are taking the action. He said, pick up your phone at this time, I'll call you. He called me, I picked up. I'm picking you up at your house at this time. We're going to go eat before the meeting with some people. We're going to this meeting. Then I'm going to take you home at this time after we talk to people at the meeting. And I need to preface this. This man was and has never been my sponsor. He just showed up. And I can tell you at that time in my life, I was leaving that meeting on Saturday night wondering if I should just go home and hang myself because these people in AA were fired up for the solution, but I didn't know why it wasn't working for me. It's like, man, you guys are talking about doing the 12 steps and like I'm here and I'm sober and why is my life not getting better? And, I met my first sponsor and my first sponsor, raced me through the 12 steps, raced me. And my first sponsor, his name's Rob. What an amazing man. He did the best he could with what he had. And what he had was me. Okay, like he was armed with the facts. He carried a big book around like it was a gun. Like he'd walk into a meeting, he'd see a new guy, and like new guy be staring him up, and he'd be like, like he was a card-carrying member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I can tell you is man, I knew what it was to be powerless over alcohol. And I'm going to tell you, this is just how delusional I was. I didn't know what it meant to have a life that was unmanageable. I just thought my life was unmanageable because I drank. I got sober super young. I was still in high school, and I just kind of was like, there were very much blurred lines in my life. He brought me to this idea of coming to believe in a power greater than myself, and I was very much against that. I told you I was raised in a devout religious household, and I just had these old ideologies that God could and wouldn't for someone like me because of the disgusting things I did when I was out there drinking, and I just held on to that. Instead of like articulating that to a sponsor, I was like, he probably don't want to hear this. Like, I'll believe one day that you guys believe, which means I don't believe and I'll never believe. And if I don't believe, how can I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to something that I think is fictional? Okay, then that brings us to writing an inventory. I wrote an inventory, and what happens is I wrote this inventory, and I'll never forget sitting in front of my sponsor at his parents' house in Hereford, Maryland, and he asked me as soon as we started sitting down, he says, all this is kind of going to be run-of-the-mill. What did you not write on this paper that you want to talk about? And I just remember looking at him like, I'm good, dog. Like, this is everything. And, to be honest with you, there was some stuff that I shared on a later inventory that I told myself that this doesn't belong in AA. And I was also petrified that if I told another man that I had experienced and done these things, that he would be like, whoa, you need to go to the other fellowship. They'll take someone like you, but not here. And yet again, instead of communicating this, I'm living off the fumes of fellowship in AA. That's how I'm staying sober, is off the fumes of fellowship. I'm going to a bunch of meetings. I'm bowling my way into sobriety, and I'm holding on. I'm holding on like a sloth to a branch, like literally holding on. And so I don't get honest. And this 6 and 7, if I'm not honest on an inventory, do I really have an understanding of what my defects of character are? Yeah, sure, I have a rough idea maybe, but there's some stuff that's pretty huge on there that I don't know about. And we start talking about A-step. Everyone makes a big deal out of the A-step. You just make a list. That's a 9-step, that's a big deal. That was the one I didn't do. I did the A-step. But I'm the type of guy that has the audacity to show up to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and talk. And let me say this. Whatever your sponsor says is what your sponsor says, and I will ride with that 100%. But my experience is that a guy like me cannot get well here. When I say things like, oh yeah, I just make living amends to my family and it's all good. No, my mom wants her money back for every lawyer she paid for to defend my freedom. My dad wants the respect and integrity of his name back. My brother, after that altercation happened where I took that young man's life, he would defend me up and down in school. But on that day, he had nothing to say. My brother wanted an opportunity to live his life. My brother is extremely successful. He was extremely athletic in high school. He was the guy in school. My brother's my hero. And that's something I've told him plenty of times over. My brother's my hero. But he played second fiddle his entire life because of the way I conduct myself removed from a solution. I don't do anything noteworthy in life. He does everything noteworthy in life, and he always has to play second fiddle. That doesn't seem right. because it's not right. And I'm willing to say, oh, I just don't drink. I can tell you I just didn't drink, and those relationships didn't get better. They got worse. And this idea of 10, 11, and 12, I remember my sponsor says it now, and it makes sense, but he's like, yeah, the first 9 steps are like 90%, or they're 10% of what we do here. The last 3 are 90%. I was like, oh my God. I've done 10% like with 0.1% honesty, and now you're telling me I do 90%? The reality is, it's like, continue to take personal inventory. I don't continue to take personal inventory because I know that I'm continuing to harm other people, and I'm continuing to live with secrets and sobriety. So I'm not going to put that to paper. I'm not going to get honest with another person. I'm not going to pray to this God. I'm not going to make amends promptly. By God, no. Prayer and meditation, I already don't pray, and you think I'm going to meditate? And then this idea of having had a spiritual awakening. I can tell you I had a spiritual awakening, very limited in nature, but what they don't tell you in Alcoholics Anonymous, or what I didn't hear for the longest time, is that you can fall asleep here. And I fell asleep in AA. I fell asleep in AA. I was not practicing these principles in all my affairs, and I certainly was not helping other people. And what I can tell you is I dragged my feet through the mud in AA for like 5 years, doing the bare minimum, sponsoring guys here and there. And the way I sponsored guys is like they would call me, and instead of sharing my experience, I would share what my science experiment was. Like, hey, maybe you should do this. And then like report back to me on how it works. So then I use deductive reasoning. And like, I got baby Joe. Little Joe I spot. I mean, look, he's mentally scarred from the. No, he's a great kid. He's not all there though, and that's not because of me though. And he'll hear this. He'll laugh. He'll agree. And I'm just like. And the worst part about it in the middle of this, and I talked to Mike. And he said, "What? I don't even know what we were talking about." I said, the worst thing and the closest I've ever felt to a drink in AA is when I get asked to speak in AA. Because there's 2 things. I can show up here and say, I'm speaking tonight. But in reality is I'm not speaking, I'm just serving. And if I show up somewhere to speak, my conduct will show that. At the end of this meeting, I'll have no time for any of you. I'll be beyond reproach. I'll probably leave as soon as I can. I'll cut it up with the 3 guys that I know that are my road dogs that are going to protect my integrity and boost my ego. But if I'm here to serve, I'm here to serve. And if that means that we're going to be here for God knows how long after, we need to be here for God knows how long, because that's what we've been instructed to do. And during this time in my life that I'm 5 years sober, I started to get asked to speak. And I had no experience with the 12 steps, very limited. And the only thing I had was this crazy story and that I got sober super young, which seemed pretty unique in the area that I was from. And I would get up and I would share the worldly things that have happened to me. About how I'd accumulated this money, about how I was getting this college degree, about how I had this great relationship, about how I had these things. And what it felt like is that I would get up to podiums like this and talk about the guy that I wish I was, or not the man that I wish I was, and not the scumbag that I was. And what happens is I go to this men's retreat every year, and I prayed before I go to this men's retreat. I said, God, you better send someone. You better send someone this weekend, or I'm leaving AA. You ever pray like that? Like, God, you're going to lose your best player unless you do something. And that never works, except for fools and idiots once in a while. I'm like, I pulled my fool and idiot prayer card. That's the only one I had. And I went to this retreat, and this guy, started talking. I was like, oh, man, I like this guy. Like, he's got it going on. And let me tell you, my first sponsor is still my sponsor at this time. Like I said, I'm just beyond reproach, and I'm not sponsored. He can't talk to me. And he wouldn't dare talk to me is how I felt. And I go to this retreat, this guy, I'm like really liking what he has to say, and then he starts talking about a spiritual entity, a cat and a hog combined, a kahog. And I was like, okay, obviously this is not the guy God sent me this weekend. And then my now sponsor gets up and he starts talking about secrets and sobriety, and he's talking about things, and I'm like in the front row like, we don't talk about that here. We don't do AA that way up here. I don't know how you do it down there. Keep it down there. And it's like, my head's thinking. And then he just goes, God's in restoration and business is booming. And if I would have heard that any other day, I would have said, no. But on that day, I knew everything that he meant when he said that. And I believed everything he said after and before that. And I was willing to do whatever it took. And I sat with him and I got honest with him about what was going on in my life. And he was so nice when we first started talking. And then I was like, hey, man, what do I got to do? Like, he started laying some things out. I'm like, whoa, this changed really fast. And it thrust me into a set of action. And what I can tell you the circumstance of my life looked like is my family relationships were in shambles. Like, I had not gotten better. I had not amended the behavior of my past. I was in that relationship that I bragged about. I had lost that relationship, and my sex conduct was egregious. The most disgusting thing that you can do is the most disgusting thing I've ever done, and I'll speak for myself, is come to Alcoholics Anonymous as an individual who has some sort of time in Alcoholics Anonymous. At that time, it was 5 years, and prey on women that have less than a month, maybe 2 months. Like, that's the most disgusting thing you can do, and I've done it. And I'm not proud to say that, but also I'm here to be honest with you. And I lost my job. I was kicked out of college. I mean, my life was just in shambles. And on top of all that, a woman that I had dated for a period of time, she had moved on because of my inability to be honest and my inability to be faithful. And she had met a man, and they were engaged to get married. And I couldn't stand to live with that. And I had her call for an engagement on the basis that I would ask her to marry me, which I knew was a lie, which was a lie. And she had to tell her family that she was calling her engagement off to get back with me, who they didn't think I was a swell guy, in case you were wondering. And then a couple days later, she had to go tell her family again that she had called her engagement off and she actually really wasn't going to get married to me. Left to my own devices, without a drink, without a solution, like, that's what I'll do. And like some people, when I say that, they look at me very askance and somewhat judgmental, and I get it. Like, I get it. Like, it's a scumbag thing. That's what a guy like me will do, to not feel alone, to feel some sense of relief. But the reality is AA does not offer relief. AA offers one thing and one thing only, that's freedom. Relief and freedom are two different objects. And I was thrust into the work here in Alcoholics Anonymous, had an experience. Yeah, I could admit that my life, that I was powerless over alcohol. I'd been removed from a drink for an extended period of time, but I could realize the unmanageability of my life. The unmanageability of my life without taking a drink. This is the best I can do. The best I can do is that. We talk about this idea of coming to believe in a power greater than ourselves. On a shortened time spray here, but I'll share this, I believe in the singleness of purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've always believed in it. I've always respected it. But in case you're wondering, yes, I've been pretty high before. And I sit down with my sponsor to talk about step 2, and I'm like really fighting this. I'm like really fighting this whole God thing. And just like the concept of like, do you believe in like aliens, Bigfoot, or ghosts comes about. Like, does anybody here believe in that stuff? Maybe. You don't have to raise your hand. No one did. But it's like one of those things where, like, I believe in that stuff and have no proof to prove it exists. Like, the moment you talk about God, it's like, whoa, no. And it's like, well, maybe you think about that stuff that way. And it's just like, just something that small, something so infantile, something so childish, because I'm childish. This idea of coming to believe, I came to believe, I took the action of the 3rd step prayer, and I didn't feel like, oh, wow, this is relief. Or I didn't feel like, oh, wow, this is great. We did that 3rd step prayer, and I immediately started writing, and I got honest about some of the things that I had never been honest with another human being about, with my sponsor in his den. And when I flew down to be with him in Oklahoma, and he opened his house to me. Him and his wife opened his house to me, and all they knew is that I was some scumbag guy. And they welcomed me in with open arms. And I always make the joke that I don't know if it was the inventory that saved my life that weekend or the fact that his wife made pot roast. But, who knows? And I had this experience where I shared everything with another human being. And he would say things like, oh, yeah, I did that too. Or like, oh, yeah, I wish I'd have done that. I'm like, oh, my God, what's wrong with you? But it's like, man, that's it. That's it. Then we have a list of we have a lot of handicaps in 6. And we say this prayer in step 7. And what it says here in the 6 is, are we now ready to let God? I've never been ready to let God do anything in my life. On that day, I was ready to let God do a whole lot of things in my life. And he told me the 3rd step is a decision. The 7th step is a commitment. The 3rd step doesn't end with amen. The 7th step ends with amen. That's a commitment there. And we start doing this list on 8, and we start making amends in 9. And that's what I want to just really focus on here in this brief couple of minutes. I started making direct amends, which apparently is somewhere in our literature. I haven't found it yet, but that's what they tell me. And I sat down with my mom, and I amended the fact that she had many sleepless nights. I amended the fact that even after I got sober, she couldn't move on with her life because she was so worried about the decisions that I made. And I remember telling my sponsor, like, oh, I don't think I need to pay her back for all the lawyers, because like that's what good parents do. And like the reality is, like, good children don't kill other children. There's a lot of money I got to pay, and I'm not close to paying it off. I'll be the first to tell you that. I didn't realize how expensive those things were. But what happens is me and my mom, we meet on a weekly basis, and we get dinner, and we watch a show. We watch a TV show together. And like my mom, she's like, we watched Last of Us together. If you haven't watched that, like pretty gory, like she's down with that type of stuff. So like it's enjoyable. No, it's always enjoyable. And the reality is it's never been about the money for my mom. It's been about the fact she wants to know her son is safe. And a couple of years ago, my mom actually got engaged to get married. And I remember talking to my sponsor, and he's like, yeah, she put her life on pause because she was waiting for you to get your life in order. I'm like, wait, I don't think about stuff like that. Because I'm too selfish and self-centered. You know, my brother, who played second fiddle his entire life, I sat down and I amended the behavior of my past. The fact that he always played second fiddle and that he did everything right in life and always came up second. And to my surprise, my brother's one of these people who's naturally unselfish and other-centered. And he just says, man, I've just always wanted you to be safe. And I felt like I let you down when our parents got divorced and I wasn't there for you the way that I should have been there for you. And my brother did everything for me. And I remembered all of that, no matter how messed up I was. And about 2 years ago, my brother asked me to be in his Dynasty Fantasy Football League. I don't know if any of you have ever done Dynasty Fantasy Sports. It's like a 10-year commitment. But like that, for me, I understood then at that moment, and this may sound so dumb to you, but like my brother realizes that through the conduct that I take today and that I've continued to take for an extended period of time, that he knows I can commit to things and I can show up and I can be the person and the man that he knows I can be. You know, my dad, when he would shake me and ask me to grow up and fix his family name, when I first got sober, I sat and talked with my Uncle Bruce, and my Uncle Bruce talked about an experience where my dad had come to his house just enraged based off me getting arrested or something again. And he just said, man, I just wish my son would like just go away and to not impede my life and not impede what's going on in my son's life and this, that, and the third. And he didn't mean that because he was trying to be malicious. He was just hurt. That's what I did. I just hurt people. And the being with my dad was tough for a long time because there was a lot of resentment there. And I called my sponsor one day about some argument that me and my dad had gotten into, and he just goes, man, dads. Wish I knew what that was like. I mean, just like nails you between the eyes. And like the thing is like I love my dad for who he is, not who he isn't. And yet again, my dad put his life on pause for me. And a couple of years ago, my dad felt that I was in a good place. He knew my brother was in a good place. My dad lives in a cabin in the middle of the woods in Hill City, South Dakota, population less than 1,000. And he's just living. He sends me pictures every morning. He's like feeding my friends, and it's like a bunch of deer out front of his house. Like it's a little crazy, but like he just living his life. You know, my best friend. I used to show up to his house, and I'll close with this because my time's expired. My best friend, my two best friends, who knew me before I got sober and are still friends with me today, and I had that conversation with my sponsor a little bit ago. Like, you have a unique experience where like you got sober young enough where there's a lot of people that you're still friends with, that you were in high school with. And not a lot of people have that experience. They've just destroyed too many bridges. And my two best friends, one of them works for the most prestigious medical facility in the world, and the other one works for the government. And I don't know what he does. I think he kills people, but I don't know. That's just me, because I'm delusional. And I made amends to them because of my conduct. I used to show up to these guys' house and pound on their doors till their parents would let me in. And my one buddy, Parker, his dad was a sober member of AA, and he passed away a sober member of AA. He would open the door sometimes, and he would give me a tarp, and he'd walk me around to their shed, and he'd unlock their shed. And this is in like cold winter nights or rainy, pouring nights where I'm freezing. That's what I'm worth. I'm worth a tarp in a shed. And I got sober and amended those behaviors. And when both of them got their jobs, they both had to get security clearances. And their number one character reference was me. I mean, these people knew what I did. And I remember asking them, man, I don't know if you want to do that. And they both talk about an experience they had. My good friend Nick, this other best friend I'm talking about, his cousin is sober in Bel Air, which is close to where we live, and he's been sober for some time. And they were at a family gathering, and he walked in, and he said, yeah, I just got back from an AA meeting, and I heard this guy give a talk. And I mean, it just like, it changed my life. And like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I want what these guys have. And like, he's like, yeah, he went to one of your seminars and it changed his life. And like, yeah, he's actively sponsored in the 12-step sponsor, guys. Has nothing to do with the talk that I gave. And I remember he told me, he said, that's the reason I put you as my number one character reference. Because I know the man that you are, not the individual you were. Alcoholics Anonymous is the greatest show on earth. The reason that I'm still passionate about AA and I do what I do and I show up to Doylestown, PA, which is not, down the street from us, is not because of the glitz and the glamour or whatever you want to call it. Because I know one day when this life is over, I'm going to come face to face with this power I choose to believe in. And I'm sure I'll have a lot of questions for God. And God may have no questions for me, but I start to hinker on this thought that God might have a question that on July 28th of 2010, I gave you a gift, Lukas. What did you do with it? On that day, I hope I have an answer. When I first got sober, I just wanted back in my mom's house. Now that I've experienced what you have to offer, I just want back in God's house. So thank you for letting me participate in your group.
Good evening, my name's Nick, I'm an alcoholic. Hey. Let's give Lukas another round of applause. It's a wonderful message of hope and recovery, and I do believe in Bigfoot, aliens, and ghosts, and I love The Last of Us when season 2 coming out. No, but that was awesome, and again, come early next week if you want to help us bring some chairs in and get set up a little better so you see what's going on here. It'd be really helpful to be of service. So please do that, show up early. We're here by 7:30, so please come early and join us. It's customary to form a line. Our speakers do come here at their own time and expense, so we usually form a line and talk to them and thank them on a personal level. They come out of their own time, so please feel free to do that, and don't run out here like he said. And I think that's about it. If anybody wants to make a donation, we do have a Venmo. We didn't announce that. If anyone who doesn't have cash wants to make a donation for the 7th tradition, we have that available as well. So come see me after the meeting if you need that, and if not, we're going to close it up. So we'll circle up and do our best to pray. Yeah. Okay. I'll do a brief moment of silence for anybody out there that we know in our hearts that are suffering. Followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You know Jack Devlin?
I do. Very close to Jack.
Absolutely.